Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds. In today's video topic, we're going to be going over a new build, a completely new build, because this build wasn't possible last patch. So this is Volcanus Warpath cast on hit Paladin, and more commonly known now, I call it Fireworks Paladin, as you can tell by the footage. So the idea is we're utilizing a bunch of spells that are cast on hit from the tree and also our weapon to deal our damage. So for instance, Volcanus has been buffed. The volcanic shards that it spews out, it's still a 10% chance, but they've made it so that they actually do damage now. I'm in like empowered monos, and the shards themselves deal like 8k per hit, which is actually a lot considering that it's just a little proc. And then I'm also utilizing divine bolts in the paladin tree for a little bit more, a little bit more clear, so that, because the issue is it's inconsistency this build has, as 10% chance on hit. That's not that much, but then when you combine all these other things like for instance manifest weapon idols, which will count as extra melee hits, you add future strikes, which does work for the magma shards and the divine bolts, by the way, I'll explain that later. Like all these things, they all work together to make us actually do damage. Now the biggest issue, like I said, is just inconsistency on a single target. Now this build utilizes flame bursts from holy aura. My flame bursts from holy aura do significant amounts of damage to a single target, but it's only every 8 melee attacks. Now you can click on holy aura to turn it on, and it will double that time, so it's like 4 attacks per flame burst, which is kind of okay. The biggest issue overall is just a little inconsistent, as you kind of have to wait for flame bursts to kill bosses, but when it works well, it definitely works well. Now this is not like the best build ever. Could you be doing something better? Yes, you could. Now, is it as fun as this? No, this is like a really fun build. I really enjoyed the entire time. This is a very cheap build, as the only thing it does require is Volcanus. Everything else is findable, or you can mess around with it. The only thing you actually need is Volcanus to play this build. Now, another cool, neat interaction with this is, since Warpath has a lot of nodes on its tree that just scale generic hit damage and not your Warpath's hit damage, so your Warpath tree ends up scaling all of your spell damage. So for instance, it scales your Flame Burst, it scales your Divine Bolts, it scales your Fire Shards, it scales everything so that you can scale it into endgame. It's like as if this was a match made in heaven. Now, there's a bunch of other things going on. So, what I found is you can actually run Lunge as a 0 mana cost skill now if you just not get the double cast node. That's a little trick I found recently, and it helps a lot with mana sustain on this kind of build, because you need to be clicking the Holy Aura button to like actually deal the flame bursts and stuff in a very quick, very quick time frame for bossing. So mana is a little bit tougher on this build, but not as bad as like the Reign of Winter Marksman, for instance, another popular cast on hit build. So the now with all this combined, you actually end up with a very close relative to like cast on crit from PoE, because this is like exactly like it is, except not as consistent, but that's just the nature of these items. I believe EHG has decided that they want these items to be powerful, but they also want them to be inconsistent, so that there's a little bit of, what would you call it, a little bit of like balance towards that. So the items are just inconsistent, but they deal a lot of damage when they do go off, which is completely fine. But another buff as well. So Warpath was buffed this patch. They made it so that instead of when you circle on something and it takes a second to deal its damage, now it actually deals its damage as soon as you hit, as soon as you right click. So why that's really good for this build specifically is because you'd walk up to a peck, click on your right click, and all your effects would go off at once. Now, before this patch, it would take a second for all your effects to go off. So the delayedness of Warpath is actually removed from it. So now you can actually kind of like clear pretty quickly. And this actually gives us a lot of ideas for making a crit Warpath build work in the current day. So I have that coming soon. But this is just a little bit of a fun build I wanted to show you guys off that's possible now thanks to the Volcanus buffs. Now, another thing, the biggest weakness of this build is it's another build that requires Logi's Hunger. Well, why is that? Well, since we're using Volcanus, we have no base space spell critical strike chance. So all of our spells critical strike chance base is 5%. So I'm at 40% after I lunge, which is like 800% increased crit strike chance. Now that's a lot of increased crit strike chance in last Epoch. That's a lot, right? Well, the idea is we can get Logi's Hunger, which will give us 3% base crit for our fire spells, which, by the way, we're scaling fire damage because this is all fire damage. The Holy Flame Burst is a fire spell, Divine Bolts are fire spells, and Sword of the Flame Shards are fire spells. So what that does, it would allow us to pump up our crit all the way up to like 64%, which is an acceptable margin considering that, considering how much we're investing and all that into it. So that Logi's Hunger would make this build work a lot better and a lot more consistent. Now, one other thing as well is Paladin. The reason why we're going Paladin, there's one specific reason, well, two reasons we're going Paladin. One is for Holy Aura for Flame Burst. If it wasn't for Flame Burst, this build would not work. It wouldn't function because you would have no single target. So Flame Burst actually saves our single target. And also as well, at the top of the Paladin tree, there's 300% increased spell critical strike chance. If you combine that with Lunge, you actually end up with a lot of critical strike chance. Like I said, once we get Logi's Hunger, that will equal even more, and the build will be much more consistent. But with that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Alright, here we are in game with the Fireworks Paladin. The name is Fireworks. I'm very original. So like I said, the main idea of the build is to simply hit a single target and cause a bunch of damage. Now thanks to Flame Burst, we have a lot of single target, and thanks to the Flame Shards and Divine Bolts, we have a lot of clear. We're going to get right into the skills here. So we are utilizing Warpath. So Warpath we got down to a 0 mana cost thanks to the Relic Inscribed Tablet, giving us -3 to the channel cost like normal. 5 points here to Unchained because it brings our channel cost -5 and gives us 30% more damage with all of our hits, not just Warpath's hits. So this actually affects our spells. Same thing with Draining Assault. It just all your damage deals more damage. So this applies dots as well. Then we take 2 points travel into Reckless Combatant. This does nothing for us. And then 2 points into Zweihander so that we have a little bit more AoE, because if we're not hitting things, we're not causing explosions. And if we're not causing explosions, the build isn't working. So we generally want our AoE to be pretty big because of that. And we take 1 node into Iron Reach for travel, 4 nodes into Whirling Blades as you deal more your hits deal more damage while spinning, which is, like I said, good for the build because that counts your hits. And then 3 points into Unchained. And now we have 1 point into Rise Grass. While spinning, you continuously pull enemies around you. So what I've realized with this build is if you are not hitting things, you are not dealing damage. So you need to be hitting things. So pulling things actually works for this build. And also as well, so for Holy Aura, right? Holy Aura procs after like about 8 hits. And why that's important is because it has a very small little AoE, but it can shotgun if you have a bunch of bosses together. So it's really strong for killing stuff like shamans, like you saw in the intro. Or it's really good for killing like a bunch of rares in the small little spot because the Holy Flame Bursts like overlap, kind of like Fireball with that setup. So that's why we're running that. So now, as you can tell, so we deal about 26,000. This is our Flame Burst DPS, by the way. It's just, this is our Flame Burst DPS. Now, the reason why this is important is, watch this. I'm going to spin, right? Now, I deal 76,000, right? We look at our Volcanus, right? Hold Alt. That's our Magma Shard scaling, right? And then if we spin, now we're doing 15,000, right? We go to the skill tree as well. We have Divine Bolts here, 20,000 to 2,000, right? And we hold this and then click on P and go here. Now it's 6,000. So we effectively triple our damage with our hits while spinning. So this build would not be possible without these nodes. So thank you, Warpath, for existing. Now, the next skill is Holy Aura. That's very important. We take 2 points travel into Rise Devotion, 4 points into Burning Blows to give us increased global fire damage, which is strong because all of our damage is fire damage, so increased fire damage is amazing for us. 1 point into Flame Burst. It makes it so 8 hits to cause a Flame Burst, then 4 points into Improved Flame Burst so that we deal a bunch of damage. This more damage multiplies with Warpath more damage, which then multiplies with your increased damage, which then multiplies with your crit chance, making it a lot of damage. Really cool, right? Now, we take 2 points into Rise Fury. All of our damage is fire, so we grab as much Fire Pen as possible where we can get it. Right? And while we utilize Holy Aura, we turn it on. This actually doubles to 20%. Then we take 4 points into Fanaticism for attack speed. One issue this build has is the fact that since our weapon has no attack speed on it, we actually need to get attack speed out of other sources. So we actually end up getting a lot of attack speed from Holy Aura and Volatile Reversal. That's how we get enough attack speed, because if you did not know, Warpath doubles your attack rate. So at 100% increased attack speed, you will attack 4 times per second instead of 2. So with 100% increased attack speed, which is where you want to get, you're literally hitting things 4 times a second, which is like every other second for Flame Burst, which is very important for your single target. Now, the reason why, like I said, that way that's so important is because after 100%, if you go up to 200%, you go up to 6 attacks per second. Now that's really bad, like what do you call that? What would that be called? I can't remember the diminishing returns. Yes, right after 100%. So you want to be at 100%, but you don't want to invest more than that if you can have to, and invest into other things because it's more important. That's one thing I learned with Warpath, especially with this build. Now we take 3 points into Shelter from the Storm for extra endurance and elemental res, so we're capped on endurance and elemental res, and that's pretty much it for Holy Aura. Now for the next skill, we are utilizing Volatile Reversal. This is very important because it's the setup, the Volatile Reversal trick with your sigils, so that you always have mana. So we take 3 points into Time Sap so that our reversal keeps going up after killing things, 1 point into Time Loss Vitality so that we can actually have a decent cooldown on the skill. 5 seconds, pretty decent. 3 points into Warp Time for increased attack speed. This is what's getting our attack speed all the way up over 100%. Then 2 points into Catching Up because you want a little bit of movement speed so that you can catch up from going, and behind. 1 point into Terminal Void Rift so that we can grab 3 points into Dark Expanse for travel, so we can grab Harbinger of Dust. Enemies hit by Void Rifts take increased damage for 4 seconds. So since we don't have any other increased damage taken modifiers on enemies, this is a 30% more damage multi for us for all of our damage, which is very strong, turns out. Then 1 point into Incipient Void Rift, so we get 2 instead of just 1. And then we grab 1 point into Time Rot. It's just like a debuff that reduces attack and cast speed by 15%. That stacks on top of Chill and Slow, so that's for bosses mainly. 2 points into Traveler's Fatigue for even more cooldown, because having this attack speed up is imperative for the build to feel good, so you want to be spamming Reversal as much as possible. So they also fix Reversal this patch. It no longer plays wonky with your mana. It actually records your mana properly. Now it no longer puts you at negative mana when you're not supposed to be. It's very nice. Now it does nerf a few other things, but mainly for this kind of build, it's completely fine. As long as you're just warpathing and not spending too much mana, you will always be at full mana pretty much with this build. Now for the next skill, we have Sigils of Hope. We take 5 points into Empowering Sigils, so you get a bunch of increased damage from Sigils, which is very important. 3 points into Decree of Flame, so you deal additional fire damage, so we deal 7 fire damage extra per sigil, so we deal with 28 extra flat fire damage. So that's on top of all the spell fire damage we have here, and the adaptive damage that Magma Shards gets and all that. So sigils are very important for this build, as it's one of our only ways of getting flat damage. We take 1 point to Last Wish so we can summon sigils while we're clearing, so we don't have to keep putting up sigils while we're clearing. We just have to do it for bossing. 5 points into Iron Sigils so that we have a little bit of armor. So if you guys did not know, Iron has been buffed this patch, so we're mitigating non-physical at 30%, and then physical at 44%, which is amazing. It helps a lot for these kind of builds because having as much mitigation as possible is nice. 5 points into Enduring Hope so that they last longer, then 1 point into Tetragram so you have an extra one. Now for Lunge is actually important this time around. So mainly, 3 points into Tactician for cooldown recovery speed and mana efficiency. Now as you can tell, we're at 1 mana cost with Lunge. 0 mana cost. Now if I take this off, right, we are at 1 mana cost. So this allows us to run Lunge indefinitely with our Warpath, which is very important. And since the cooldown is 2.3 seconds, right, this thing that lasts for 4 seconds is always up. And we always want initiative to be up because you can tell our spell critical strike chance is 33%. So if we Lunge, we're at 45%. So that's how we get a lot of our crit. So you always want this up. So you always want to be lunging as well. Now, 4 points into Forge On, so we get increased armor. So as you can tell, this stacks as well. We get up to like 69% armor. So if you have like the double charge, you can actually stack this. But since our build doesn't use the double charge, it doesn't matter. Then invincible while lunging, obviously, so we can, you know, fly through those Maruna Ogre slams and stuff. More area. The area actually matters for this build because your Lunge can actually proc effects. So your Lunge is like pretty much an extra melee attack. Then 2 points into Blood Rush as well, which is really useful because it just gives us life gain. Like pretty much everything else on this tree is useless, so this is like pretty much exactly what you want. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Now let's talk about the passives. So for the passives here, we have a base Sentinel tree, 8 points into Vitality because we want as much HP as possible, 5 points into Armor Clad because we're playing Warpath because we want the DR, 10 points into Relentless because we want as much increased damage as possible, and then 2 points Travel into Axe Thrower. This counts just as another hit. For other stuff, it doesn't really matter. You can put this point anywhere into Iron Mastery, into the Strength. Doesn't really matter where you put it. And then 5 points into Blade Master as we need the attack speed. We really, 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 really need that attack speed, so we're grabbing the attack speed. Now, you must be wondering, well, why don't you just run Smite? Well, where's the room for Smite? Tell me where to run Smite, please. We actually had this conversation on stream why I couldn't run Smite. If I could run Smite, this would be amazing, but I can't because everything else is so imperative for the build. Now, Void Knight, this is actually a lot of different trees with this build. 10 points into Abyssal Endurance, so we cap our Void and Fizz Res. Later on, if you get better gear, you could actually get rid of these points and put them somewhere else if you really want to. But we're actually getting 22% crit multi from this tree. Well, we're actually getting a lot more crit multi than that. 17, 18, 28% crit multi from this tree. This is bugged out. It's not showing you all the points, if that makes sense. So yeah. We're getting 28% crit multi from this node. We're actually taking 10 points into Future Strikes. So the reason why we're taking 10 points into Future Strikes. Now, Future Strikes is an ailment that applies on an enemy. When you hit an enemy, you have a chance to inflict Future Attack, a Void Attack that hits 2 seconds later and deals 50 Void damage. Now, if you did not know, Future Attack, it kind of, what do you call it? What would that be called? It inherits the tags of the attack. So for instance, if I hit something with Warpath and I cause a Future Strike, let me show you, I'm just waiting for it. It can proc our unhit effects. Mainly just Divine Bolt and Flame Shards. It does not proc our Flame Burst for some reason. I don't know why it doesn't, but other than that, I can show you again. It just procs all of our on-hit effects. So it gives us extra ways of proccing our on-hit effects, which gives us more damage. Now, since Warpath is, I believe it's 100% chance to hit to apply a Future Strike. I don't think there's, it's 70%. So Warpath has 40% reduced chance to apply ailments on hit. Since Future Strike counts as an ailment, this is about 60% chance, which is still a lot, considering, right? That's still a lot. Because we're going to be hitting so many times per second, we're going to be doing a bunch of Future Strikes, which will just proc our stuff infinitely, pretty much, right? That's pretty nice, right? That's pretty much why we're running Future Strikes. It's just extra damage. So before you ask me why we're running Future Strikes. Now, Paladin, we're taking 8 points into this Fire Pen and fire damage. Fire Pen is amazing for us because all our damage is fire, so we're running Fire Pen. 8 points into Defiance, getting this Ellie Res. Now, if you did not know, the shards from Volcanus, they scale off attunement at 8% per point, mind you. So that's insane. So if you just want to scale flame shards, you attunement stack. But I'm not just scaling flame shards, I'm scaling everything else. So that's why we're not just stacking attunement. 1 point into Divine Bolt, it's a 20% chance, but we're reducing it by 30%, so it's like 17% or something like that, 15%, so that we can get +3 Divine Bolts. So we always shoot out like 4 Divine Bolts for clear, right? Because we want a little bit of clear with our Divine Bolts, right? But we don't need too much because we proc it so often anyways. You don't need all 5 points in this. It'll just make it so that when you do proc Divine Bolt, you only get like 5. It's better for single target to have it this setup. Now 7 points into Holy Symbol for more necrotic resistance. Once you get better res, you could dump this and more damage stuff. 10 points into Holy Precision for the 300% increased spell critical strike chance. This is very important for the build. It's the second reason why we're going Paladin. Now we are level, where is it? Level 88. Now the nodes we would grab, we would probably find a way to cut some nodes from Abyssal Endurance, right? So that we can grab all 12 nodes of Reverence of Duality for the increased HP. That's pretty much it. I believe you just grab all 12 of these nodes and then you'd be good to go. That's all you need to grab. So, and to finish this build off. Now that's the passive, and I'll talk about the gearing. So for idols, I don't have them all unlocked. It's whatever, but if you were to have this last 3 unlocked, you would just have Warpath area. Not very important, right? Like whatever. Now the more important idols, we have Manifest Strike, and Manifest Strike. Why is this important? Well, if you don't know, our procs, including our Flame Burst, is procced by Manifest Strike because it counts as a melee attack. So our Flame Burst, if we do something, let me show you. Our Flame Burst procs really fucking fast now, right? As you can tell, procs really fast thanks to our Manifest Weapon Strikes, right? So this is really good for single target, so we really want to be using these. Now for suffixes, I have no clue, but we just want Manifest Weapon idols. We don't care what's on the suffix. Now for idols, we want crit chance or HP and crit chance. The small idols can just go for like res or whatever. Just use whatever res you're missing. And like I said, for the 3x1, you want area. That's pretty much it for idols. Now for gearing, we have a helmet with increased fire damage. You'd run vitality as well, then increased health, and then just flat health. For our amulet, you're supposed to have Fire Pen here, but I managed to grab a decent amulet with like spell crit and frailty and HP. So, but like I said, instead of that elemental damage, you'd rather run Fire Pen, I think. So just remember that. There will be a build planner in the description. I'm going to make a quick one. It's not going to be too updated because it won't have idols and stuff like that, but it'll have the important stuff on it. So there will be a build planner in the description. It's just, it will be outdated once the build planner gets fixed. Now, we have Volcanus here. This is the most important part of the build. We leech a lot from health, from fire damage. We cast Magma Shards on hit. Very insane. It's like these projectiles, those red projectiles. They actually do damage now, thanks to the scaling, because they gain adaptive spell damage per level. So once we reach 100, it'll give us 100 flat on top of all the other flat we have, which is insanely strong. So don't let the number fool you. This is actually doing a bit of damage. Now, for our chests, we're just running +2 to Warpath. We actually need +2 to Warpath, mainly because we have a lot of points that we want, because we want the AoE. So that's how we're getting, like, if you did not have +2 to Warpath, you would take these 2 nodes out, take these 2 nodes, and then just run 1 node in Whirling Blades and 1 node in Iron Reach. But +2 Warpath is very important to have all that area, because the more hits we do, the better. So we want the area, right? That's why I have +2. And then HP, crit avoidance base, normal stuff, paladin stuff. For the rings, this is a little bit different. This is a lot of where increased damage is coming from. As you can tell, we have like a lot of increased fire damage. We're like 684%. So like this is where like a lot of it comes from. On this ring, you'd have fire damage in the implicit, spell damage, and then increased damage or crit. So fire, spell damage, crit. That's what you want on these rings. And then like HP, endurance on your suffixes. You can actually run copper rings instead and run crit, spell damage, fire damage or whatever. Just make sure you have a little bit of crit, because you're going to want that once you transition to a Logi's Hunger for your amulet, because the more crit the better, because at like 70% crit, like the build becomes like super viable. Now for the gloves base, we use Solarum bracelets because we want as much crit as possible. So crit, crit, attack speed. Attack speed is very important. You really want this attack speed. Makes the build feel amazing. You really want attack speed. And then health, and then health. Or frailty. Or frailty. You'd put frailty here, or frailty on your tablet, after on your relic, because you're going to be upgrading to a Logi's Hunger, so you won't have frailty here, so you'd probably need it here or here. Now for the boots, just HP, movement speed, HP, like get good res on that base. I'm like 1% off, because whatever, right? These are a really good pair of boots. I've crafted these the other day. I'm very proud of them. They're about, let's see, it's like T like 18 boots. That's like, that could like make any build good. And then for tablet, we get spell critical strike chance because it works for all of our spells, right? Critical multi, and then health. And then you probably put frailty on the last. And that's pretty much it for the gearing. Like I said, the only necessary thing I would say is 100% necessary to get the build started is just Volcanus. Everything else can be farmed for. So that being said, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and bye!